Bible Worm, reading the Bible with Bible Worm.
Welcome to Bible Worm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, professor of religious studies at Hendrix College and theologian in residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock, Arkansas.
And I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning and Music at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish, one Christian.
This week we're reading Luke 2:41-52, the story of 12-year-old Jesus left behind in the temple as his parents return home from the Passover celebration. We talk about the ways repeated rituals like that ancient Passover pilgrimage can open up space for new and profound encounters with God, opportunities to integrate one's own life into the story of the Torah and into the light of God's revelation. We also ponder the tension in this text between Jesus' earthly family and his heavenly Father. While it seems at first as though Jesus' relationship with God necessarily takes precedence, we find that ultimately Jesus goes home to live obediently with his earthly family. We think about the tensions in our own lives between God's calling and the calling to be with our own families, and what it means to discern our own priorities in any given moment. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Amy, it's Bible Worm time.
I know! What's
Amy,
up, Bobby?
The most amazing thing happened to me last week, maybe. I was sitting in my office and somebody knocked on the door, and I thought it was one of my colleagues.
That's a rare thing.
I know.
Nobody
It's rare.
comes to your door.
Actually, it's kind of rare. Like I try to portray this image of like, don't mess with me.
That's how this door works. No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Continue your story.
What does that sound? And so I said, come in, and the person walked in, and it was the parent of a prospective Hendrix student who was on campus because she listens to Bible Worm with a group of people who have a Bible study in a bar in Houston. And they were like, that seems like an interesting place. And so they came to visit Hendrix as a potential college for their kid.
That's
because
so
they like
cool.
Bible Worm. I know. It was amazing. And so we had a nice little chat about Bible Worm and how this group is a Bible study group, but they meet in a bar. And so like the reading of the text is not really the thing that they do. So they listen to the podcast, I guess all of them, and then they get together and they talk about it.
I used to want to have a group like that met to discuss the podcast on being. Like everyone would listen to it and then we would discuss. And I always like to do things in a bar, but we never did it.
It would be good. We should do Bible Worm in a bar.
Bobby, that's super cool. I hope that this prospective student's parent enjoyed their time at Hendrix, and then maybe they'll wind up there.
Yeah, you never know.
Awesome.
You never know. It would be good. And it's kind of nice, because like when you're podcasting, like we're just like sitting in our offices talking to each other. And so it's nice to actually like see the actual people who listen to the podcast and find value in it from time to time. We get to do that sometimes when we go on these retreats and things. We're going to be together in Durham in March with a group from First Presbyterian Church of Durham doing a little thing down there. And so that will be good.
I love Durham.
I have never spent any real time in Durham.
We're going to have a good time, Bobby.
It's going to be good times.
Maybe we can move the whole program to a bar.
I think my kids are going to be there, so it might be a certain kind of a good time.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Amy, we are moving on today in the Gospel of Luke. We're in chapter 2, verses 41-52. Jesus is still a kid. We get more. Luke lingers over Jesus' childhood more than any other gospel. Mark doesn't even, Jesus is just a grown man when Mark starts telling his story. We've been in Jesus' childhood, pre-birth, and now... Then last week we were in his infancy. Now we're going to be in his tween years when he's 12 years old. Is there anything? I mean, we missed out on 2 verses. Anything in those 2 verses that seem like we need to fill people in on?
I think I even commented on the 2 verses at the end of the podcast last time.
That's probably true. Yeah.
So Yeah, I don't think we need any ketchup, but I do think
love
it's really tweens really love ketchup too.
Yeah.
In my experience, there's something
My
about
kid
that
does not love
sweet.
ketchup, but she loves mustard. She will just like French's yellow mustard, just like eat spoonfuls of it. It's amazing.
That is very unusual.
It is very
I
unusual.
like your kid more and more. This is your older kid?
My older kid. She's
I
pretty
like
awesome.
that kid a lot.
Yeah, both my kids are pretty awesome. But the older one is like old enough that she has like her own being, you know what I mean? And it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
I really love that. I promise we're going to talk about this gospel in 1 second. But yesterday I got my first early birthday present.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a very special bougie apple cider vinegar.
Oh.
Because I put vinegar in my water now because I'm old. And it also discourages my children from taking my water because they think it's disgusting.
Yeah.
But I bet your child would.
Wait,
would
I
like
make the connection
vinegar
for me
in
with
water.
vinegar water and being old.
No,
Vinegar water
well,
is strange to me, and is it because it adds flavor, or does it do something for your digestion? Like, what is that about?
Well, I mean, I do it because I like things that are a little bit punishing, and that's how it connected to mustard to me.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
I wouldn't say I like the flavor, but I feel like it's a very like grandparent thing to do. Like, why are you putting vinegar in your water? Why would you do that?
Oh no, that's exactly the reaction I'm having right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
It's so you won't drink my water. No, I don't know. It might have health benefits, but water's boring. I need like an edge.
Yeah. Somebody described once, I forget what they were talking about, maybe pineapple or something, but they were like, yeah, when you bite it, it bites you back. And I was like, that's pretty awesome. So like your water like bites you back.
It does. Yes, that's correct.
All right,
Anyway,
Amy. So
moving on.
Jesus has grown up now in Nazareth, which is up in Galilee in the north, far away from Jerusalem. And now he's going to come back to Jerusalem. We'll have to talk about whether we think he travels back and forth. I'm not really sure. But anyway, this story takes place when Jesus is 12, as we'll find out when I actually start reading this text, which I will do any moment
Which will happen any moment now.
Could happen. Is it now? Nope. Is it now? Nope. Okay, I'm in chapter 2, picking up in verse 41. I'm reading in the Common English Bible. Each year, his parents went to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. When he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem according to their custom. You thought I was going to read more than that, didn't you? But that's all I'm going to read. That's it.
It's all you get.
That's the introduction to the text. So there we go. So there's a couple of details here. One is that we are at the time of Passover. Mm-hmm. And so can you tell us a little bit about, Passover now is practiced differently than Passover was practiced in the first century.
For sure.
In many ways. Can you talk to us just a little bit about celebration of Passover?
Yeah, so Passover is one of 3 Chagim, which are pilgrimage festivals. Passover, Shavuot, which is like around May. It's like, what's that Christian holiday that's like Shavuot?
Pentecost,
yes. And Sukkot, or the Festival of Booths, it's called sometimes in English, which is in the fall. And these 3 holidays, there is an expectation that all Jewish people from all over the land of Israel at this time, and maybe even from the diaspora outside of Israel, would make a pilgrimage to the temple in Jerusalem in order to offer a sacrifice. And Passover, among those 3, I don't know if I would say there's truly a hierarchy, but I will say in the biblical text, Passover has like a backup date. Like if you're sick for Passover and you can't make the pilgrimage, there's another opportunity to go and offer the Paschal sacrifice, which to me is sort of an indication that this one is really important.
Yeah, I didn't know that. When is do you know when the backup date is?
It's like a month later, I think. Pesach Sheni. It's just another
second Passover.
Yeah, second Passover opportunity.
Interesting. Yeah.
So you can just imagine what is going on in Jerusalem at this time.
Yeah.
These are, it's like like the Olympics descending upon a small town? Or, I mean, a pilgrimage is not like the Olympics, but just in terms of
crowd size.
Like a city trying to accommodate a crowd of people that is just really not what its infrastructure is developed for. And I can't even imagine what it would feel like to be in that kind of crowd of people and also have that sense of like real religious closeness, like both in terms of being in the temple, where there really was a sense that God was more present than in other places, and also at this particularly sacred time of year. I imagine that the air just had this sort of electricity about it.
Yeah.
Is my imagining. But as you said, that this is not how we do it anymore.
Yeah. You know, Josephus, the Jewish historian who was a sort of later contemporary of Jesus, right? He was writing his main work sort of at the end of the first century, like around 80 or 90 or something like that.
Okay.
He describes there being in Jerusalem at Passover 3 million people, which is that's a lot of people just in general. But in the first century, that's a heck of a lot of people in one. Like Jerusalem probably had 25,000 or maybe 50,000 inhabitants. And so 3 million people come.
I just can't even imagine.
Josephus probably is a little bit of an exaggerator, but but still.
Fine, but the point,
even if it was like a factor of 3, there's still 1 million people there. You know what I'm saying? So it was big. Amy, you and I read, we all did together, the Passover text from Exodus 12 and 13 back in the fall a little bit. And so I don't know if that plays in here at all, but can you just remind us what Passover commemorates?
Yeah, let me tell you what I remember, and then maybe there are other things you'll want to fill in. I mean, Passover commemorates the Exodus from Egypt. It's the night that the last of the plagues is going to happen, which is the death of the firstborn, and the Israelite slaves are told to sacrifice a goat.
I think you can do either one.
Sacrifice it and roast it and, eat the meal that night and put the blood on the doorposts so that the angel of death, or maybe God's self, whoever is going through the land to smite the firstborn, will skip over those houses. And then indeed in the morning, they realize that this has happened, and the Israelites finally have this window of time to get out of Egypt.
So Passover is, at its most sort of basic level, is commemorating the escape from Egypt that God enacts through the plagues for the Israelites. So God leads them out from under Pharaoh's rule. So Passover then becomes, during the period of Roman rule, Passover becomes a little bit of a politically charged holiday because it's celebrating the freedom of the Israelites or the Jewish people in this era from their foreign conquerors. And so there was always a little tension in Jerusalem at Passover. Now, when we get to the end of the Gospel of Luke, we're going to be at Passover again. Yeah. And the sort of political tension is going to be very clear there. Here, I don't know. But I always say that when we are reading the Easter text. So it seems like, okay, well, we should probably maybe think about that also being the case here, the sort of politically charged moment.
Yeah, I love that.
The text tells us that they were coming to Passover as was their custom. And the verb there in Greek is imperfect, which seems to suggest this is a repeated activity. Does it inform your reading of the gospel in any way to know that Jesus's family's custom is this sort of sort of pilgrimage to Jerusalem, which is part of his Jewish identity?
I love that question. I mean, the sort of simple-ish answer that comes to my mind is that it just is in keeping with some comments we made about last week's text, which is the importance of Jewish ritual in the lives of this family, that they, circumcise their child and they name him on the 8th day, and they go for purification on the 30th day, and they make that offering to the temple in place of offering their own firstborn. Okay, that made it sound like they might have sacrificed their firstborn, which is not true. You should listen to last week's episode.
Yeah.
But this is just sort of baked into who they are.
Yeah.
But another thing that I was thinking about related to this that's, I don't know, maybe a little bit less grounded specifically in Judaism, but just about what it is in my life or in our modern lives or in ancient lives to have these kinds of recurring big events like this, like a pilgrimage or something that we have a relationship to, but it takes us sort of out of our everyday experience a little bit and gives us a different, I don't know, window, or like it shines a different light on our existence in some way. I find those experiences really powerful.
Yeah.
Especially when you're raising children, because they're so different every time you go through the ritual. And so I just have that sort of in my mind reading this passage, that they're kind of outside their everyday life.
Yeah.
And those always feel like important moments for me to reflect on my own life.
I love that connection, especially just coming off the holiday season where we've all been kind of doing that in our own way.
Yeah.
And so to think of that as like, it's familiar because it happens year after year, but it's also a set apart time.
Yeah.
And it really does feel, and especially these sort of, when you take a journey connected to some sort of ritual, a different time, but also a different space. I like that a lot. I also appreciate you connecting back to last week and when you're just reading straight through Luke, it really is this sort of like series of Jewish rituals that we get just all in a row that are recognizing that Jesus is being raised in a very traditional Jewish family of the first century. And somehow this story is taking place. It's growing out of that context, not sort of as a like coming crashing in from the outside, but something that is developing within that tradition.
Yeah.
One other thing that's here is that Jesus is said to be 12, and it's very specific about that. And I'm just curious what you think, like, what does 12 matter? Why does it matter?
Yeah. So the age of, quote unquote, adulthood, maturity, something like that. I have a couple answers to the question. The first answer is we think of sort of the age at which children become responsible for themselves, at least in a Jewish way, in a Jewish community, is typically 13. And so this is and there are some ancient texts that reflect this general mindset also, that really 13 is the age. So 12 is like, is not yet, but is getting there,
right.
Is at the age where you're starting to, like, the parents need to start preparing themselves. They need to think about what tools this child will need that the child doesn't already have to be able to make the best decisions for themselves within whatever context they will be considered adults. I was listening a while ago to this other podcast called How God Works. And it was talking about life cycle events that happen in different communities and like how the community decides when to start considering someone an adult and how they decide what that life cycle might look like. And all of it is really about sort of what is the age at which they naturally start pulling away anyway. Like you have to give them the tool. You want to give them the tools they need and let them start making decisions as soon as they can. So they're not fighting against you so much.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I have that thought in my head. But Bobby, I also had the thought this morning, didn't you say when we started reading this gospel that you picture Mary as being about 12?
Oh, yeah.
When she's pregnant?
I do. That's so interesting. Yeah, because I still think of Jesus as a kid here. But I absolutely 100% said that Mary was probably 12, 14.
Yeah,
somewhere in that.
Right.
Yes.
Somewhere in that.
So Jesus is now the age that his mother was. Ish, when she gave birth to him.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a little hard because I think 12 in our modern world is treated differently.
Yeah.
So maybe this would feel more akin to like a 16 or 17 or 16-year-old, something like that in our world. But
yeah.
Yeah, someone who's like not really a kid, but is not an adult, right in that place of starting to pull away.
I mean, we always joke about the tween Jesus story, but that really is kind of what we're talking about here. Like,
yeah.
Not still a kid, not quite an adult, just right in that sort of transition moment. The Mishnah, which is a little bit later than this text, but not too much later, talks about a child being responsible for their vows at the age of 12, responsible to the commandments at the age of 13. And so, you sort of see this slow transition of like, you didn't have any responsibility when you were a kid, and then now you're sort of becoming responsible for yourself. And then there's this next stage where you truly are sort of an adult under the Torah that is yet still to come. I think that's a really nice way of reading it.
The tween way is funnier, though.
The tween way is funnier. Yeah. yeah.
Jesus popping his gum.
Hi everyone, it's Bobby here. This month, Bible Worm has a special offer just for you. If you've ever thought about joining our Patreon, now is the time. For the month of January, we're giving all our subscribers access to the full range of Bible Worm features. If you join now at the Bible Worm supporter level, you can get early access to episodes, weekly worship liturgies, and video Bible studies, all for just $4 for the month. If you've ever wanted to try out our Patreon, now's the time. We hope you'll join us. And now, back to this week's episode.
Okay.
All right. So I'm in verse 43. After the festival was over, they yada-yada'd the Passover festival, by the way. Like they're on their way and then it's over. It's kind of funny to me. After the festival was over, they were returning home, but the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents didn't know it. Supposing that he was among their band of travelers, they journeyed on for a full day while looking for him among their family and friends. When they didn't find Jesus, they returned to Jerusalem to look for him. I just want to pause there to linger over the feeling that they must be feeling in this moment. Can you talk to me a little bit about this sense of like, I mean, I don't even know how you talk about that, but you realize like a day out that you left your kid? How does that even happen?
I mean, well, okay, so let's talk about that. How does that even happen? And I think, again, that points to maybe two things. One is that 12 then was not 12 now.
Yeah.
But also, I think the way that communities functioned as a village in a way that they don't really now. And this isn't sort of a great story about that because it doesn't work out very well. Like the village does not actually take care of the situation and they have to go back.
Yeah.
But I think it's really striking that the parents just accept that, no, of course we can't see our child at all times. Like, of course he's somewhere within our friend and relatives. Like it just doesn't occur to them that they need to lay eyes on their, almost independent child all the time.
Yeah.
But then the realization that things are actually not okay, or at least not okay in the way that you thought they were okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the last time we read this text, Bobby, I had kids who were around this age.
Oh, yeah.
And now I have kids who are more around, my kids are 16 and 18. So now it's more sort of like that other transitioning towards independence in our life now. And I think it hits me differently, like this idea that you give your children what is really an appropriate level of independence, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I love that emphasis on all of that. The idea that there's like this group from Nazareth, it's probably their family and their close friends that all travel together. Like, I really like that sort of like, you kind of tend to think of Mary and Joseph, or at least I do, as like socially isolated people or something, like just their little pod. But in fact, they have this whole world and Jesus was part of this big group.
Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking when you were talking was that like there's like 3 houses in a row on my street that all have kids about the same age as my daughter. And so they'll like go play and then they'll move houses and then they'll move houses again. And we can keep track of them for a little while. And then we, like the parents all try to text back and forth, like they're at our house now, they're at our house now, they're in our yard now. But there have been numerous times where I don't know. I mean, I knew she was like within a couple of houses of me, but I didn't know where my kid was. And so I'm like, I could totally see how this would happen where you're just like, oh yeah, kids with their friends.
Right. And he knows what he's supposed to do. He knows how to follow. Like,
yeah. And he's just like, I mean, he's been an obedient kid this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, I think this is true. We'd have to go back and read for sure, but I am almost positive that this is the first verb that Jesus is really the subject of, or I mean, he grew up back a few verses ago, but like the first decision that he makes, the first like active thing he does in this gospel as a subject is this: Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. I just think that's such an interesting, like the first, he's a tween, the first like
he's asserting, yes,
decision he makes is I'm going to stay behind.
No, I mean, I love that. And this really, that's what we're talking about. This is the age where there is some tension about decision making. And his decision is, I mean, we'll see, causes distress to his parents, but it's not a bad decision.
Yeah,
and
no,
on
it's not.
Itself, like it's just in relationship to his relationships.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can see how he gets where he gets.
Yeah,
but it is not a good decision from the perspective of his parents. Yeah. Well, let's go on and read what happens next. Mm-hmm. When they didn't find Jesus, they returned to Jerusalem to look for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple. He was sitting among the teachers, listening to them and putting questions to them. Everyone who heard them was amazed by his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were shocked. His mother said, "Child, why have you treated us like this? Listen, your father and I have been worried. We've been looking for you." Jesus replied, "Why were you looking for me? Didn't you know that it was necessary for me to be in my father's house?" But they didn't understand what he said to them. It's a little unclear to me whether the 3 days includes the day journeying out and the day journeying back, or whether once they got back to Jerusalem, they still looked for him for 3 days.
Oy, oy, oy.
But either way, super stressful.
Yeah, I mean, with the crowds that were there at that time, like it's not like getting lost in Nazareth.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, that's important too. Like these are folks from the sort of agrarian, far away from the town of Nazareth. Country bumpkins in the big city, and they lost their kid. When I was young, like I think I probably saw paintings of this or something, and it was always like the temple was kind of a small, quiet place, and Jesus was like chatting with the teachers. But like the temple was not a small, quiet place.
Yeah.
It's more like being at the football stadium or something on a game Saturday.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, or like Grand Central Station where people are coming in and out and
Because I'm a little bit like, wouldn't you go to the temple? Like, isn't that the place where you probably would go? Like maybe you'd go back to your Airbnb first, and then when he wasn't there, then the temple is obviously where he's going to be. So why did it take him so long? But
that's a good question.
It is, I mean, it's kind of a tumultuous place. Just, I think, at Passover.
Yeah.
Do you make anything of the 3 days? Like, 3 is a number that we notice, you know?
I know. I'm so glad you asked that, Bobby, because I was like, oh my God, I'm like such a new reader of the New Testament who's like obsessed with 3 days now. Like, okay, sometimes things just take 3 days, Amy. Like, calm down.
Yeah.
But, and like, they can't find him for 3 days. They can't be with him. He's gone from their life for 3 days. And when they find him again, he is with the proverbial father.
Yeah.
I don't know what parallel could be made. I mean, there ends the parallel as far as I can take it. But it does seem kind of like poetic.
It does. Yeah. I mean, I feel some tension about this because I'm like a little bit, it can't just be every time you see the number 3, you're like either like Trinity or crucifixion. Yeah. But Luke is also a creative author who is thinking about how to craft a story. And so, I mean, the way you're pointing it out, like they're in Jerusalem, they're at Passover. He is gone for 3 days. They find him on the third day. They are worried. When they see him, they are shocked and amazed. He is with the Father. Like, it just really reads like a pre-telling of the crucifixion and resurrection story, like a small version of that. And I think Luke is enough of an artist that maybe we would want to read him that way.
I feel like the way that it feels, that parallel feels possibly informative to me, or that it changes something for me, might again be like as a Jewish person reading this text, but like death is death. Like to say he was dead for 3 days and then resurrected feels really different to me than he's here, but we don't know where. Like we can't see him. We can't touch him. And so it is making me try on that sort of softer sense of the 3 days.
Yeah.
Not that it would have felt soft at the time, but yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. One of the commentaries I was reading was pointing out that in the parable of the prodigal son, after, the son has gone away and then he's come back, and then the father is with the older son. And what he says is, this brother of yours was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found. And so there is something going on in this gospel in which this sort of lostness and foundness and dead and alive is they're being related to each other. And I like the way you're thinking about that, is like lost and found is like the soft form of dead and alive. Yeah. But this gospel really, Luke does seem to be playing with those ideas. And if you just move that over from the prodigal son to where we are now, this is like the soft version of the resurrection. I like that way of thinking about it. Amy, the family language here is just so clear, like sort of unnecessarily repetitious. And so we get, his mother said, "Child, your father and I have been worried." And Jesus says, "Didn't you know it was necessary for me to be in my Father's house?" So we've got these family relationships that are very much at the fore here. Can you talk to me about how you're understanding what's going on there?
Well, I guess I have two thoughts, but the first one is, sort of as we were talking about before, that it's not that the decision that he made to stay behind is itself a bad decision.
Yeah.
It's that he is inside the social construct of a family.
Yeah.
And he is still a minor.
Yeah.
And within that construct, like those relationships hold you in a certain way. And what he has done has torn at those ties, like is an offense to those relationships. Yeah. It's not an offense outside those relationships.
Yeah.
But then his second use of Jesus's use of father, which in my study Bible is helpfully capitalized.
Yeah.
In case you didn't pick up what he's laying down there. It really sort of puts that, puts into question maybe what it is to prioritize those familial relationships above all else, which certainly was his parents' expectation, I think.
That's the way that I read it too, is Mary is saying, your obligation is to your mother and father, lowercase f. Mm-hmm. And Jesus says, but I'm in my Father's house, capital F. And so it's raising that tension between where do the loyalties lie. Mm-hmm. Jesus, not the loyalties, like it's not that you can be loyal to one or the other, but that's the priority. That's the language.
You have to prioritize.
And Jesus is saying the priority is capital F Father.
Yeah.
And Mary seems to have the expectation that no, it's lowercase f Father and mother.
Yeah.
And so that's the tension that is sort of animating this text, is Jesus has these sort of two relationships that are in tension with one another.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The Common English Bible has, it's necessary for me to be in my Father's house. Is that how the NRSV also reads it?
It's close. Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? But then it has a note that says, or be about my Father's interests.
Yeah, the word house is actually not in the Greek. There's no noun there. It's just the word like tois, like the plural things. It's the things. And it could be neuter or it could be masculine. And so the like house is just imported there. It makes sense, right? He's in the temple.
Well, sure, because this sounds like it's referring to the temple, but that...
Right. And we're like, where are you? Well, here's my location. But it could also be, I must be about the business of my Father, or like the things of my Father.
Yeah.
Which would be like the interpretation of the law. Or it could be like among the people of my Father, which is to say like the teachers of the law, they're my Father's folks. And so I had to be with them. Do you have a way of reading, like preferring one of those or thinking through those options?
Gosh, I wasn't thinking about all those options before, but I kind of really like taking the house out of it.
Yeah.
And having it more be like, yes, his parents are really focused on where are you? Because we have a responsibility for your well-being and we need to know where your body is. And I love this idea that the question is not about where his body is. The question is, what does he concern himself with?
Yeah.
And he concerns himself with whatever his Father, his divine Father, concerns himself with. So that could be teachers, or it could be the ritual life, or it could, whatever it is. But I like that idea that he pushes further against the question they're asking.
I like that. I really like that way of reading it, Amy. I had not quite gotten that far myself, but taking he is in the temple, so he is in the place, but what he is doing transcends the placeness of the place.
Yes. I
like that a lot. And of course, that's going to be kind of how this gospel plays itself out in some ways, is this kingdom of heaven that Jesus is about does have a connection to the temple, but it's not confined by the temple. And so thinking about that here in this moment, that seems like a really smart reading. I like that a lot. Jesus uses the word in Greek dei, necessary, like I have to be doing this. I don't know if there's anything to say about that, but he sort of interprets it not as like I chose to be doing this instead of that, but like this is what I had to do. And his question, like the CEB has, didn't you know that it was necessary? But the Greek is more like, you knew it was necessary, didn't you? Like it expects that the answer should be, yes, you knew that. So I just think it's interesting that like the necessity, like Jesus is not just like, I casually decided I'd rather be doing this than that, but like I had to do this and you knew I had to do this, right? I don't know if there's anything to make out of that or not.
That makes me want to ask the question, is the way that Jesus felt he had to do this, like felt this obligation, the clarity of it, like fundamentally different than the way another religious Jew would have felt it? Like would you say yes? His parents knew he should do that, but just were sort of like, yeah, well, we got to go. Like, yeah. Like that's nice, but we got to go. Or was he really having a fundamentally different experience than another religious Jew would have?
The way I have always read this, and I think the way I'm still reading it, is like we just came out of a huge angelophany in chapter 1, where Gabriel announced to Mary who Jesus was, and that he was going to be the Son of God, and that he was going to be the Messiah, who's going to be the one who inherits David. And now it's been 12 years, and maybe we haven't really talked about that much.
Yeah.
And here now we have like Jesus saying, you knew this, right? And using the language of Father for God, which we knew that from Gabriel's announcement, this will be God's Son, but we hadn't really maybe connected all of those dots. And so one way of reading this is Jesus is saying, hey, y'all, you knew this from before when I was born.
Yeah.
You knew this was coming, and now here it is.
Right. Maybe they didn't know exactly how this was going to play out.
Yeah.
But this is how it's going to play out for now.
Which is such an interesting theme then when you think, because they're like amazed and astonished. And it says in verse 50, they didn't understand what he said to them.
Yeah.
Even though they had been prepared for this by the angel 12 years earlier, and even though Simeon and Anna in the text we read last week had confirmed what the angel had told them.
Yeah.
So there's this interesting sort of theme going on here about even the ones who have every advantage in understanding, the parents of this kid who had the angel tell them, they still can't get their head around what is happening.
Yeah.
I don't quite know what we're supposed to do with that, but it seems like it is here for us in this text.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that too. And when I first read through it, I was thinking like, is it because they're in this like moment of anxiety? Like once you get yourself all whipped up into, and you know, like it's one thing to have an angel come talk to you when nothing is going wrong. But now they've just been through this really scary experience of not knowing where their child was. I don't know. I was thinking about sort of the way that fear or anxiety makes us less able to be receptive to that kind of thing. I'm also really aware, you know, we were talking about the sort of strength of the family web of relationships in this immediate section, and then the strength of the community web of relationships previously, that they're walking with this big group of people and just assumed their child would be in there somewhere. Almost in the same way that, like we talked about, pilgrimage is a time that you kind of step out of your everyday life and have this other experience, and then you go back to their everyday life. I feel in this section this real awareness of like their everyday life is being so rooted in social structures of their community. And maybe it's hard for this other information that they've gotten to like trickle, like, that's a nice idea. What does that actually mean? I have no idea. We're raising a child. Here's what it looks like to raise a child. We're going to do all the things, but maybe they should have been more specific in their messages to Mary.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just said a bunch of stuff. What do you think about that?
I like that way of thinking about it, Amy, as like something extraordinary is happening with this kid and they've known it.
Yeah.
But the extraordinary seems pretty ordinary, I would think, for those 12
they
years.
have a day-to-day life with this kid that, as far as we know, looks pretty regular.
Yeah. And so it's easy to kind of like get lost in the mundaneness of it and lose track of the fact that this is like kind of an exceptional story. And here it's sort of brought back to them. Yeah. The other way that I was kind of thinking about it is like, I don't know, you kind of want your kids to live some sort of extraordinary life, but also you kind of want your kids just to like not like just be able to like live their life.
Yeah. And
I sort of feel like sometimes those two things are really in tension with each other. Like, and it definitely in the case of Jesus, but like, it's hard. Like an extraordinary life is often a very difficult life. And so maybe they've just gotten used to the idea of like, they want their kid to just like have a life. And like, here it is kind of coming back at them like, no. And so this little like lost in Jerusalem is a reminder that, you know, Anna at the end of last week's text had said a sword is going to pierce your soul.
Yeah.
This is a little like, oh yeah, this is going to be hard. And then it's going to get yet still harder.
Yeah.
The thing that Jesus is doing in this text is sitting with the teachers in the temple. He's listening to them. He's asking questions of them. And people, including his parents, are amazed by what he is saying. I don't know, like, it's just so interesting that that's sort of like Jesus is coming out moment. Like his debutante is like, let me teach in the temple with, and it's not just that he's talking a lot. It's that he's listening, he's questioning. Yeah. Can you talk to me just about that being the way Jesus sort of comes into adulthood?
Yeah. That podcast I mentioned earlier, how God works in that episode where they're talking about rituals and milestones that mark the beginning of adulthood, they talk about all kinds of different ways that different communities might mark adulthood. And it has to do with what you're going to need as an adult in that community. So there are communities where maybe you would have to go out into the wilderness for a certain amount of time and take care of yourself. There are communities where you would have to endure some kind of pain and show that you could persevere through pain. There are, as you sort of joked before about debutante, but like there are communities where you have to really look super femme, like, that's what's going to mark your adulthood, because that's the thing that is understood to be like a source of power and survival in this world. And within the Jewish community then, and still now, when we think about bar mitzvah, which is, that ritual is very modern, the way that we do it now in America. But the idea is that you can engage meaningfully with these teachings that we have inherited. And I love what you pointed out here, Bobby, that it's not just that Bobby, I just made Jesus into Bobby.
Yes,
It's not that just that Jesus is teaching. Jesus isn't like holding court in the temple.
Right.
He's listening and he's asking questions and he's answering things. He's in like a real living conversation.
Yes.
Learning together with the people who are there. And they are amazed at the way that he's engaging in the conversation, but it's not like now the expert's here.
Right.
And everyone else should be quiet. And I just think that's so beautiful. Like that's the kind of learning that I always aspire to be involved with.
I love that point, Amy, that Jesus is taking his tradition very seriously and he's trying to find his place in it. They seem to be amazed by his questions. They seem to be amazed by his answers. And so he is engaged as an adult in this conversation where he is learning how to be part of this community. Mm-hmm. In the gospel, so often Jesus is seen as in conflict with the leaders of the Jewish religious sphere. And, as he makes the tradition his own, like he starts to sort of rework it in some ways or emphasize some things that establishment forms of religion are uncomfortable with. But I really love that the way it starts is this kind of deep respectfulness. They seem to engage with him too, not just like, hey, kid, like get out of here, but like, hey, this kid has some good questions. Like, it's just a really beautiful back and forth of the tradition and the young buck, and they're like, like together. I think there's something going on in this text about the importance of understanding the tradition from whence you come. Yeah. Even though we know that the story is about sort of trying to transform it. Yeah,
really pressing the boundaries of that in different kinds of ways or reinterpreting some important parts of it. But it comes from a deep knowledge and respect.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So there's just a couple verses left picking up in verse 51. Jesus went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. His mother cherished every word in her heart. Jesus matured in wisdom and years and in favor with God and with people. This is interesting to me just because we were just talking about obligations to family and obligations to God. And it seemed like we were sort of headed toward like obligation to God takes precedence over obligation to family. Like Jesus is sort of establishing his independence.
Yeah.
But then the next thing that happens is he goes back and he lives in their house with them and is obedient to his parents. How do you hold those two themes together?
It makes me read this little pericope here as like just sort of like touching down in this.
Yeah.
In this, real tension between human and divine worlds and relationships to the human world and the divine world. But then it lifts again. Like I don't know if it's like giving us a preview of it or if there's a different way to think about it. But I mean, it's particularly interesting to me that it says he was obedient to them.
Yes.
Like that's pretty pointed language saying like he just tucked himself right back in that
Yep.
family structure in this sort of ideal way, even though he was about to, reach an age of maturity. So yeah, there's this moment of tension and then it totally dissipates.
Yeah, that's the way I'm seeing it too. And I can't quite figure out what to do with it. Like Jesus has established like my true father is the heavenly Father, and I must be about the things of my Father.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm going to go home with you and be obedient. And it seems like this is like an ongoing thing, like for the rest of Jesus's, teenage years or whatever, until he reaches the age of independence. He goes and he lives out his life. And I mean, the closest that I can kind of get to it is, that one has this sort of extraordinary call. That call yet still unfolds within the structures of the family and of the society that he comes from. And so it's not a total rending of those relationships, but like this bringing together of these kind of ordinary and extraordinary in a way that holds together. In a way, it makes me think a little bit about the doctrine of incarnation and like Jesus as fully God and fully human. Like Luke is not talking about that, but it would be easy to be like, I'm God, but that's not the way it goes. It goes, God is my father and you are my parents. And Jesus holds those together.
Yeah.
The human element is as important in this story as the divine element is.
Bobby, it's making me think also of a conversation we had when we were reading the book of Daniel. That same sort of tension of like, Daniel is clear that his orientation is toward God. And there are times in, human history that creates a real pointed tension. And then you have to make a decision. And the decision is to do what God tells you to do. But that doesn't mean that you're not being rebellious against human systems in order to be rebellious. It's just that there are times of tension and there are times of not tension.
Yeah.
And they have a time of tension and then that's it for a while.
We were talking a minute ago about who's the subject of the verbs. And the beginning of this story, it was the parents went to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. And then, Jesus was with them. The end of this story in verse 51, Jesus went to Nazareth with them. So Jesus is now the subject of the verb and they're like alongside. So it's like, in some sense, Jesus has moved from the object position to the subject position.
I love that.
Through the course of this story. And yet he's still like, he's exercising his subject position within the family until it's time for him to do something else.
I love that. So he is, but it's more like he's doing it.
Yeah.
I love that. That seems important.
We get a notice here that his mother cherished every word in her heart, which we have seen previously in the infancy narratives. Do you have thoughts about what do we get from Luke reminding us that the mother is cherishing all of this?
The way I encountered it here was sort of the fact that it gives us this note here, and it doesn't give us this note when Jesus says this thing to her that she didn't understand 2 verses ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know quite exactly what to do with that. Like, it seems like, unless we just want to say, again, sort of she's out of this moment of immediate worry and tension and has this sort of spaciousness to see the grand sweep of things and cherish them in her heart.
Yeah.
But they're a little more abstract, or they're a little more, I don't know, rounded out. Like, I don't know if what she's cherishing includes the story about what he did that time in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
But I know that's been my experience as a parent, that you're in the moment when the thing is happening and it is not cherishable at all. But later on it is. So I don't know. Mostly I'm curious about why it doesn't give us that note when Jesus responds to her in a surprising way earlier.
The Greek there can be read as cherished every word in her heart, which would sort of point you back to what Jesus said, like, didn't you know I must be in my Father's house? But it can also just be read as thing. So she
my translation says
things.
things. Treasured all these things in her heart.
So it's like a story that you tell later. I don't know. I kind of like that because that's sort of the way that I am just as a person, is I often do not understand the significance of what is happening to me, like while it's happening.
Yeah.
But afterwards, when I have a chance to think about it and like reflect on it, and I think, oh, that was an important moment. Like I sort of think of Mary that way. She's an internal processor and she's just responding in the moment of crisis earlier, but then she comes to reflect on it with this sort of cherishing, like, oh, that was really something, even though she didn't get it at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've moved from her lack of understanding, which Luke told us about, to her cherishing.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe even like maybe she still doesn't understand.
Right.
In which case you get like, it's possible to cherish that which you don't fully understand.
That's maybe strangely, that's how I have almost always understood this expression as it's come up, because it's always after someone says something to her that's like, how could she possibly understand what is being said to her? Like,
oh yeah. Yeah.
So she just treasured that in her heart. I'm just going to treasure that in my heart.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I like that. Okay, Amy, well, this little text has yielded lots of little treasures to ponder of its own accord. I'm curious, when you think about this text and where it intersects with the world today, what are you pulling out?
I think my answer might be a little bit strange, Bobby, but I'm a little strange, so I'll give you an answer that's a little strange. I'm thinking about, we talked a little bit in the beginning about what it is to have these, annual rituals or pilgrimages or something that takes you out of your everyday life, but also has a way of like shining a light on some kind of truth in your everyday life that you maybe don't know totally how to integrate, but it's there and it sort of points it out to you. And, we have, this is very different in all the ways, but in my community, we chant from the Torah every week, and often people will come up to say the blessing before a Torah reading on the occasion of some life cycle. Like maybe it's a birthday, maybe it's the anniversary of a parent's death, maybe it's a wedding anniversary, something like that. And then they'll get sort of a special blessing after they do it. And I've come to think about it as this moment to like bring this moment in your own life into like the light of the Torah. Like I actually picture that we're in like almost like a field where like the light is different, and you just take this moment in your life and say like, what does this look like in the light of the Torah? And so I guess I'm reading the experience of this text sort of through that lens of what does it look like to step outside your everyday life and move to like the place with the highest godliness quotient at an incredibly holy time of year, and say, what does it look like at this moment to have this child as our own? And how important it is to have moments in our life that we can do that. I mean, we can't, go to the temple and make a sacrifice anymore.
Yeah.
But I hope that people have moments in their lives now where they can step back and just wonder, even if they don't know how to integrate any of it in an intellectual way. That's where my heart is. It's not, I don't have like a strong intellectual response to it, but that's the sort of the feelings response that I have from this text.
I love that, Amy. And you were mentioning the Daniel text a little bit ago. And what you were just saying reminds me of that with Daniel. Like there it's the ritual that he has of prayer 3 times a day. That is kind of a ritual that punctuates his life. And the significance of it really only becomes clear, sort of like in that lion's den moment where now he's got the resources that he needs. And this sort of the ritual of the return of Passover in which these sort of extraordinary things can unfold. Like, it's only possible with the ritual.
Yeah.
But also there's these extraordinary moments that unfold within the ritual that like punctuate it as a different kind of a thing. I don't know. I haven't quite fully processed that, I think.
No, I mean, I feel like I haven't quite either, but I appreciate the way that you said it. Yeah, I don't know. There's some mystery in there for me.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about, Bobby? What is this text raising up for you?
The thing that I'm paying most attention to today is this theme also that's in the book of Daniel in an interesting kind of way. But this theme of this extraordinary life of commitment to God, who is Jesus's true father, that is yet unfolding within the structures of the tradition from which Jesus comes. And so we get that notice that Jesus is raised in a family that observes Passover seemingly every year. Jesus has been doing this for his whole life. We get him sitting in the temple, talking with God's people about God's things, like talking with the teachers about the Torah, asking questions, taking on board answers. And sort of in that act of conversation, there's the amazement. And then going home and still being part of his family and unfolding his, like, he has now revealed or named out loud for the first time his connection to God, and yet he just goes home and lives out his life. And so I just think Jesus is modeling here in this interesting kind of way that the revolution, like he is about something that's going to turn out to be sort of revolutionary. I mean, it's revolutionary in the sense, in like the true sense of radical, like going back to the roots.
Yeah.
And so the thing that Jesus ultimately is going to do is call people to be faithful to the Torah, right? The vision of the kingdom or community of God that's laid out there. And before he can do this sort of radical thing, he has to understand what that is. And so he's lingering in his tradition and sort of calling people to be more faithful to the tradition out of which he comes. We sometimes read Jesus as this sort of like comes in from the outside and like breaks up everything and like does something new.
Yeah.
And that is not the way Luke is thinking about that. It's deep understanding and reflection and recognizing the things of God with the people of God in the place of God that's going to shape who he is. So I think for me, that calls us on the one hand, just to remember that for those of us who are reading as Christians, that the Christian faith is actually deeply connected to this other tradition that comes before us. And then I think just as modern people, to remember that the way that change happens, the way that revolution takes place, is by deep attention to the traditions and history from which we come. And we need to go back to and understand where we come from so we can shape it toward the future. And I think Jesus gives us that model as well.
I love that.
The other thing I love in this text is that the teachers in the temple seem to take Jesus seriously. And that sort of generational thing of like, maybe somebody's coming along behind us who's really going to do something, and to take the time to be with them and help them see and shape their understanding so they can do the thing that's going to come after us. Maybe that's part of this text too.
Yeah. And to take seriously what they say.
Yeah, exactly.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Exactly.
Scene.
All right, Amy. Well, next week we are picking up in the next verse, where it'll be in Luke 3, 1-22, which is John the Baptist and his baptism, and then Jesus is going to get baptized himself at the end of next week's passage.
All righty.
I'll see you then.
Good, Bobby. I'll see you then. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Bible Worm. If you've enjoyed this free podcast, we hope you'll help us keep it going by joining our Patreon for as little as $4 per month. You can also sign up for other goodies like early access, video lectures, weekly liturgies, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast for details.
Bible Worm is produced and edited by Bobby Williamson. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby, and our theme music is The World at Large by Dano Songs. Many thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping make this podcast possible.
Join us again next time when we'll discuss Luke 3, 1-22, the stories of John the Baptist and the baptism of Jesus. Until then, keep on digging.